Good afternoon, everyone.
The camera here.
And welcome to the premiere event in celebration of Daniella's Bat Mitzvah. It is so nice to see the number of people who have traveled from all over the world to be here today. In the Torah portion that was read yesterday, Parshas Vayetze, we learned the story of Yaakov's flight from his brother Esav and his arrival in the home of his uncle Lavan. Yaakov shows up at the well outside of town, and what follows is a fairly standard formula of boy meets girl, boy falls in love, decides to marry girl, boy works for girl's father for 7 years for right to marry girl, gets tricked into marrying her sister instead, then also marries the first girl, and works for another 7 years for the right to marry both. Okay, maybe not your standard formula, it would make for a great sitcom. At the end of the second set of 7 years of working for his father-in-law, Yaakov approaches Lavan once more to inform him that he has fulfilled his commitment, and he asks for permission to leave. And at this point, Lavan says to Yaakov that during the time that Yaakov was living in his house, watching over his livestock, Lavan's wealth had grown significantly. He also recognized that this wealth came from God, and that God did this in Yaakov's merit, not his own. And he therefore asks Yaakov to stick around longer, and this time to work for a salary. So after some discussion, the agreed upon salary is that Yaakov gets to keep all the spotted and speckled sheep and goats, while Lavan gets to keep those with no spots and speckles. Sheep and goats was actually common currency back then. As we learn later, Lavan had made numerous attempts to try to trick Yaakov and modify his wages. So Yaakov decides to take matters into his own hands and help ensure that as new sheep and goats are born, they come out spotted and speckled. Now his methodology is definitely an interesting one. He takes wooden rods, peels back the bark, forming spots and speckles in the rods. He places the rods in the drinking water of the sheep, and lo and behold, the next generation of sheep and goats comes out spotted and speckled. Now, I'm not entirely sure where Yaakov studied genetics, but I am pretty sure that shouldn't actually have worked. And what that means is that God had clearly intervened to make sure that the plan did work. And that, of course, begs the question, why the Torah would tell us about Yaakov's bizarre attempt, rather than simply stating that God had decided to make all the sheep spotted and speckled. Well, to help answer the question, I'd like to share a story about a man who we'll call Billy. Like many before him, Billy wanted desperately to win the lottery. So on the day of the drawing, he prayed really hard. He prayed that he would win the lottery that night. But unfortunately for Billy, he didn't. So before the next drawing, Billy once again prayed really hard. This time, he started a day earlier, figuring that the extra praying should help him win this time. But once again, he did not win. Well, he wasn't yet totally discouraged, and he figured that this likely required a full month of prayer. So he prayed for a full month, and at the drawing 1 month later, he once again did not win. Well, this time he became furious. Billy began to yell at God, expressing in words totally inappropriate that I will not share today, that God does not listen to him. And at this point, there was a flash of lightning and a roll of thunder. The house shook and all the lights dimmed. Which, by the way, if that ever happens to you, it's probably not a good sign. You're probably in big trouble. So anyway, big flash, loud thunder, house shook, lights dimmed, and a voice called out, "Billy!" And Billy turned towards the voice and cried out, "God, why won't you let me win the lottery?" To which the voice responded, "Would you at least meet me halfway and buy a ticket?" Now, if I've accidentally given you the impression that a lottery ticket and some prayer is all it takes to win, keep in mind that the rules of statistics and probability are heavily stacked against you. And that's why you need to study math. Torah tells us about Yaakov's efforts, though somewhat misguided, to illustrate to us the importance of helping ourselves and not depending solely on God to perform miracles to provide for us. Only then, once we've chosen to help ourselves, will God step in and assist. Or as the saying goes, God helps those who help themselves. Of course, this rule of helping yourself also applies when seeking out help from people as well, as a person is more likely to assist another who has already made efforts to help himself. Daniella, I believe you've reached the age where I can let you in on a little secret. Now, this secret was shared with Sipora when she reached the age of Bat Mitzvah. and I may let Ethan in on this secret when he reaches the bar mitzvah. So I do ask that you not tell him in the meantime. You see, I don't actually know everything. And I'm really sorry to have burst that bubble. You see, I don't know everything that the future holds. However, what I do know is that during the course of your life, you will be met with many challenges. Some will be big and some will be small. And some of the larger ones may even seem impossible. You'll find that when it comes to any of those challenges, if you just get started on them, and then you ask for assistance, others will be more likely to assist, and they won't seem as daunting. For example, let's say, hypothetically, that you have a speech to write. I don't know, maybe for about mitzvah or something. Purely hypothetical example. Once you start putting that speech together on your own is when others were willing, I mean hypothetically would be willing, to assist in completing that speech with you. Hypothetically, of course. And now, in the spirit of the Thanksgiving weekend, I'd like to say some thank yous. I wish to express my thanks to my wonderful wife, Michelle. Michelle, I'd like to thank you for all that you do in general, but specifically what you've done for this celebration. Now, I'm not saying that I'm one of those guys who is simply told what to wear and where and when to show up. But at the same time, I do think that for various reasons, you did take on a majority of the work for making this event happen. Whether it was putting together the centerpieces on your own, by the way, the amazing centerpieces that Michelle did, all on her own. Shopping for just the right dresses for everyone, which I believe was practically a full-time job on its own. Coordinating with the hall, with the caterer, with the photo booth, and all of that while taking care of everything else you normally do, which I will not list because we'll be up here all day. Michelle, I don't know what I would do without you, and I want you to know that I love you very much. Mom and Dad, for all that you do, I'd like to say thanks. Thank you for being the parents that I have chosen to inherit, for teaching me by example how to raise my children. And thank you for taking those angelic children off of my hands every now and then, so that Michelle and I can get what we call a true vacation. Daniella, I'd like to thank you as well. Daniella, pay attention. Daniella, I'd like to thank you for keeping life, well, interesting. From a very young age, you have always kept me on my toes, challenging me with questions that you would ask. You must have been no more than 3 or 4 when you started asking questions about why God created us and why we are here. And while I still don't have the answer to that one, I have enjoyed all of the challenges you've thrown my way and helping you find answers to some of your less philosophical questions, as well as helping you think of some of your own answers to those questions that may not have such concrete answers. Don't ever lose that inquisitive nature of yours, as it will be an asset if you allow it to guide you. I am extremely proud of the way you've grown up, and I look forward to being there with you, ready to take on any challenge you throw my way as you continue into adulthood. Daniella, I love you very much. Mazel tov.